Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past several months, we've held a number of important and thoughtful hearings and roundtable sessions together, which I really appreciated. We've exercised oversight into the standard privatized housing that many military families had to endure. We've addressed the challenges faced by military spouses and their families. And we're continuing to explore the best ideas to improve the department's prevention of and response to sexual assault within the ranks. I must say that while I appreciate all the coordination with my colleagues and the very hard work of the committee staff to produce some very good incremental improvements to the military justice system, the latest data from the Defense Department shows a 50% increase in sexual assaults against women in the military. That should be a call to action for all of us. Enough is enough. It's been 5 years since General Dempsey said the military would fix the sexual assault crisis, but clearly that has not happened. We have to do better. We need to pass the Military Justice Improvement Act to take sexual assaults and other violent felonies out of the hands of commanders and allow trained military lawyers to make those legal decisions. Mr. Chairman, I believe on balance that this markup is a very good starting point for debate and discussion about how best to serve our men and women in uniform and the civilian workforce that supports them. In particular, I'm pleased that the mark includes numerous provisions that advance the fight against sexual assault in the military. Specifically, the Subcommittee Mark 1 recommends that duties of the Special Victims Counsel and Victims Legal Counsels expressly include assisting survivors who experience retaliation for reporting sexual assault offenses. Second, it encourages victims of domestic violence and sex-related offenses to secure both military and civilian protective orders. Third, it requires the DAC IPAD to conduct a review of potential racial and ethnic bias in the military justice system. 3, it encourages military judges to give deference to sexual assault survivors who desire to testify at courts-martial sentencing proceedings. The markup also includes other provisions that I strongly support, including authorizing funding to support a 3.1% pay raise for the troops, authorizing $40 million in supplemental impact aid, and $10 million for impact aid for severely disabled military children, matching last year's authorization to address clusters of underserved disabled military children. It addresses the very burdensome effect of the 2017 tax law that harmed federal employees who were asked to relocate overseas to serve our government. Instead of keeping their moving allowances as tax-free, the Trump tax law made this allotment taxable income. I am glad that our bill this year will reimburse civilian employees for this tax burden and counteract this harmful effect. It requires military department boards for the correction of military records and discharge review boards to liberally review veterans' claims to update their discharges or dismissals. It requires contraception coverage parity with the Affordable Care Act and the TRICARE program. It directs the Secretary of Defense to conduct a study of the incidence of infertility among members of the armed forces, and it reduces extra housing payments that the department is required to make to privatize housing contractors, which would allow the services to use the funding to improve housing and incentivize better performance by contractors. I will also say that I was disappointed, but not surprised, that the administration's budget did not pay for an increase in this, did not include a pay raise for the civilian workforce. Private sector wages increased by over 3% this year, and by law, the civilian workforce should receive a 2.6% pay raise. The subcommittee mark does not address this shortfall. We cannot hope to recruit and retain the nation's best civilians if salaries don't keep pace with inflation, let alone private sector competition for the same talent. We cannot forget that the department's civilian workforce is also vitally important to our national security. I look forward to working with Chairman Tillis here and at the full committee to work toward a bill that will benefit our men and women in uniform and the civilians who support them. And I want to thank Ms. Stephanie Barna, Dr. Al Edwards, Mr. Sean O'Keefe, Ms. Katie Magnus, Ms. Soleil Sykes, and I want to thank the minority staff, Mr. Gary Lealing and Mr. John Clark.